All right, this is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, back again with Brian Solomon. What's it going, Brian? How's it going?
It's going great. Happy to be here. PWI's junior writer, Brian Solomon.
Yeah, I don't know what it takes to be senior. I think you just got to be old. Well, you're older than I.
Junior writer?
I know, well, because Al said senior writer, so he's been there longer than me. So
I never know what to call you, Brian. You're on the team very much. Yes.
Cub reporter.
Yeah. And the boss, Kevin McElvaney, PWI Editor-in-Chief. How's it going, Kevin?
I'm doing fine. I want to apologize for my hair. I'm after we record this, I'm beginning a week-long vacation, and one of the first things on my list is to get this mop chopped off of my head.
Well, can I just say, I think, Kevin, I think you just became the first person in history to ever apologize for their hair on a wrestling podcast. That's a first.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to talk about. This is one of the reasons we're going to have Kevin on. A busy week for wrestling, certainly with all the fallout from SummerSlam, but not just SummerSlam. Within SummerSlam, we've got the return of Brock Lesnar. We've got really three new world champions, or at least three world title changes when you count Punk. News with Seth being back and cashing in. And a lot more. Hoping to talk a little bit about WWE Unreal and kind of the bigger picture of, what it means for the wrestling business and people kind of proclaiming the official death of Kayfabe. And yet I think there was other things that happened over the week that suggest that Kayfabe is very much alive and well. And some other stuff. I think we might even get a little bit of political talk, which is always kind of a touchy subject, but I do think there's some overlap this week. So
I'm ready.
Yes, I got to be very careful, but we got the boss.
I did it on my own show, and I risked, being burned in effigy. I survived. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, not to get ahead of myself, but one topic we've talked about a lot here over the years is the fact that Donald Trump has been, I don't want to say persona non grata, but he has been out of WWE television since he was elected president 9 years ago. And we saw the return this week to some extent. And I think there is a bigger conversation there about what that means and kind of a change in tone and maybe a change in approach to the handling of Trump by WWE. So we can talk about that a bit. Right now, let's tell you about the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, available on newsstands now, with Chelsea Green on the cover, an interview put together by Candace. Lots more in this issue. Kevin, you're here. Why don't you talk about what's in here and what you're excited about for readers to check out?
Yeah, there's a lot in that issue. It's funny because you asked about that one, and we have another one coming out digitally next week, and we're already working on the following issue. But in that issue, that story with Chelsea is really great one. She touches on not just wrestling topics, but some bigger life topics that through the wrestling lens, and I think it's very interesting to read about. There's a story on there that I wrote about Kosei Fujita, who won the youngest ever Best of the Super Junior winner. There's a story on Worlds Collide, which hard to believe, that's how long it's been since that event now. But there's the real winners and losers, which Al, I know you're a big fan of that.
Yeah, I was thrilled to see that
concept. Yeah, so I thought it would be fun to bring that one back. David Fitzgerald Jr. wrote that. And then we have, I'm actually kind of blanking on what else is in the issue, which is terrible. But we have,
there was a feature on For Love of the Ring, which was
of course, the Dean Show. Yeah, so that's a really cool thing.
There's my remembrance of Sabu in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff. And then we have, like I said, another issue coming out digitally next week. So it's a good time. For a limited time, we still have the cheap digital subscriptions available. So you can go check that out if you're not currently subscribed, and you'll get the issue with Chelsea on the cover, and then the new one when it drops. And then the following issue will be the PWI 500. And then we're into what we call list season.
Yeah. And a little bit of news. We have a 500, right? As of, I guess, yesterday, you sent out a draft of the list. Last time the three of us were together, we were talking about top 10 and beyond that. So obviously spoiler free, but any thoughts on how this year's list will be received? I know yesterday in when you sent out an email to us, you touched on some names that didn't make the list that I think are pretty, might be surprising to some.
Yeah, there are a couple. And I'm hesitant to list names just yet,
No,
but there are a couple names of people who are reliably on the list, and some you'll be able to look and like, okay, well, this person, despite being very high up in the industry, having a championship of note, doesn't have enough matches to qualify, and I think people are familiar with that. But another problem we've run into, and we ran into this last year with the women's list with Charlotte Flair, when you have a high-profile wrestler who's on television who does not win a singles match the entire year. So how do you proceed with that? It seems, and it's case by case to a point, but it seems odd to have someone who does not win a match appear on the top 500 wrestlers list. Like, it is largely about wins and losses and in-ring achievement. So there are a couple names who have fallen off who are normally on, who did not win any matches, or maybe won like a token match or something like that. But we'll see a little bit of that. Other than that, I mean, I feel like I say this every year, but one of the most competitive lists I've seen put together, because you have some wrestlers who have returned after long absences. You have some new wrestlers who have risen to prominence, a lot of major title changes, a lot happening internationally, a lot happening on the independent circuit. The influence of WWE ID that brought some new people to a higher level who will be ranking on the list for the first time. Just a lot of cool stuff going on and very exciting. And like I said, we have this issue out now with Chelsea on the cover. We have another one coming out, and then the 500. So we're really in just go mode right now. And hence the vacation while I can take it.
Absolutely. And of course, the place to go, PWI-online.com, pick up the current issue, subscribe, make sure you don't miss the 500 and every other issue we've got coming up. As Kevin touched on, we're getting into our busy season, so get in now while you can. All right, let's talk SummerSlam, everything else. So I was there both nights, had a great time, for sure. Great weather, and I don't plan on being in Vegas next year, so this was kind of like an early WrestleMania trip. We spent the weekend in North Bergen, New Jersey. So a lot of fun. A couple of quick takeaways. I think something that's got out on social media. Night one was very much not sold out. There was a huge section at the top. I don't want to say half, but a very large section of the upper seats, upper level, completely empty on night one, and also a good portion of around the stage, kind of behind the stage, and those were certainly seats that were full on night two. So what that tells you, there was more interest for night two than night one, which is not surprising, given that the main event was on night two. My other a big take: SummerSlam does not need to be two nights. I on the whole, I enjoyed the show, very much enjoyed the main event, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But there was a lot of filler. I mean, I feel like there was one good 5 to 6 hour show, which, I know I don't want to be a hypocrite. I complain about shows going that long, but dragged out as whatever it was, 2 4-hour shows. It was just way too much. A lot of filler, a lot of not very good matches, not very over matches. I think you could have taken the best 3 or 4 matches from night one and the best 3 or 4 matches of night two and had a much better card, understanding that would have meant leaving a lot of people off the show. But Ryan, I'll ask you, what overall did you enjoy SummerSlam? What do you think about it being 2 nights?
Yeah, my reaction was mixed. When you say SummerSlam doesn't need to be 2 nights, I agree. And I even say WrestleMania doesn't need to be 2 nights. The thing is, I still think that when you look at these 2-night shows, what we said this about WrestleMania, there's a really good one-night show in there if you pare away the stuff you don't need. And it does feel like a lot of stretching to me. It's like we got to fill up 2 nights. Matches you don't necessarily need to have. I think when you have a big major show like this, it should be like best of the best, the top angles, the top feuds, the top performers, even that kind of thing, instead of just how can we get as many people and matches on this as possible in 2 nights. I thought the first night, it's ironic. The first night I thought was overall a better show than the second night. I mean,
I disagree.
I have two thoughts on this. I think the main event both nights delivered big time.
Mm-hmm.
They were in different ways. They were very different types of matches, but they both delivered. My problem was the second night. It's that old thing. It's like, you throw all these crazy stipulations on one night for some reason. I don't know. It made it seem very lopsided, and I thought it took away, even though they stepped it up and they really did deliver a great match, Cena and Rhodes. It took away from that main event the fact that you had already seen a cage match, and anything goes, no DQ, a 40 tag team, tables, ladders, all that leading up to it. And then, hey, we got a street fight main event. And it's sort of like, okay, well, we've seen that 7 times already. So that was my issue with night 2. I thought night 1 was a little more balanced and had a little bit of different things on it. But overall, I think the main events delivered. And again, I echo what you say, that this could have been a really solid one night show if they'd, done that.
Yeah. And if you're, if it's any saving grace, you want the main events to deliver. So if anything was going to be good, that's what you want.
But the difference was, I thought,
to save the show.
Yeah. The difference was, I thought on night 1, the main event really, really delivered, but the undercard leading up to it was also good. And I thought, with night 2, I really felt, again, this is just me. I know a lot of people love all this crazy stuff, including my 8-year-old son, who went nuts. Tables, ladders, and chairs, and he's screaming, "This is my kind of wrestling." 8-year-old boy actually said that. But to me, the main event of night 2 saved the show, whereas I wouldn't say that about night 1, that it saved the show.
Yeah, I largely agree, except for I thought the undercard on night 1 was pretty dull. There were a few, okay to good matches and a few bad ones. I mean, I thought Karrion Kross and Sami Zayn was pretty terrible.
Yes.
I thought Jade and Tiffany was not good at all. I thought the women's tag team match was kind of dull. I thought Jelly Roll, delivered. I thought that was maybe the second most exciting match of the night. And I thought the opening match with the Uso, whatever, Jay and Roman and the Brawns was fine. It was fine, but that's it. I mean, and that Seth and Punk, or Punk and Gunther was very good, but not great. I
don't agree with that.
People remember the exciting finish, but I thought there were moments that it was, I was kind of looking at my watch at some points. So, how about you, Kevin? Overall, your thoughts on SummerSlam as a 2-night show? And it sounds like we're getting more of these. That was another kind of bit of news that I think's been leaking out over the weekend, and I don't know how much there is to it, but there's talk about doing this with all the major shows, and I could see it happening. The Rumble, Survivor Series have a war games on each night. The Rumble have a Rumble on each night. So if anything, some of the other shows are kind of make more sense to do this than SummerSlam. So I don't doubt that we're going to be getting a lot of these 2-night shows.
So yeah, I get the argument against length and against too many matches. So I mean, I'm a nothing I like more in the world than a 2.5 minute just good pop rock song, right? But like so brevity and being concise, there's really something to be said for that. But having been at All In person and having to, then not having to, I could have chosen not to go to the press scrum, but you're there to do your job. Yeah, that was longer in one day than both these put together, I think. So I'm kind of used to it from a lot of these, not even just AEW shows, but like New Japan shows, and some of the big events from New Japan are very long. Some of the big Joshi shows are very long. So I'm kind of used to it. Except that unless you're there in person, someone could always choose to pause it and pick back up later. And maybe that's an argument for having these as 2 nights as opposed to one long show, so I don't know. I have kind of scattered thoughts on it. I think it's probably better to offer too much than not enough, especially when you have a situation where we'll be talking about this later on, the new structure that's where things are going to cost a little more for the viewer. So, but overall, this particular show, I thought it was good. I thought overall probably a little bit more entertaining than WrestleMania, because I think WrestleMania was a little bit,
Didn't have to think about that.
Yeah, I think main event heavy the one night, and then the other night was more consistently good, and you sort of had that same thing here. I agree with Brian. I think a little bit too much on the gimmicks on night 2. I think it reminds me to draw another AEW comparison, like Revolution, where you had 2 matches where they had glass in them. It does, okay, you've already seen it once, then you see it again. So on this night, you had 2 matches in a row where someone's hands got tied up. By the way, just
that's true.
I enjoyed both of those matches, like overall, but the way that they got out of those. So you had Lyra Valkyria go under the ring. I think they did some really creative stuff with her trying to get these off the zip ties, and then she crawls under the ring and they're just off. Yeah. So you don't get to see the resolution.
Yeah.
Hey, and there's a lot of stuff under that ring.
You have Jacob Fatu just rip the hand.
Hornswoggle with a pair of scissors.
But we didn't see it, so we never know. So just a quibble. I thought those were both good matches, but just for
I didn't think either was a very good match.
The thing with Jacob Fatu,
you didn't like either of those matches?
No, I mean I thought they were kind of overbooked and
too much
and busy, and so
definitely busy.
Not working for me. And as much as cage matches are interesting in WWE, that the promise of a cage match is always kind of exciting, right? Like, ooh, a cage match, and then it gets in the ring, and the reality is it's very limiting. You're not going to take. No spots can go outside the ring. You're not going to bleed these days. They just don't do that,
Right.
So it's just a match where you can't go outside the ring.
Well, the blood used to be, as barbaric as it sounds, that was like the number one attraction for it. Like, oh, we're going to see blood. Oh, and now they don't do that. I mean, you're not wrong to a degree. And it still feels weird to me when you have a steel cage match that's not the main event. It's just kind of weird. It's like, we're going to lower this cage. Oh, now we're going to raise it again and have more matches. It's just a weird vibe to me. One thing in that match, you mentioned Jacob Fatu and the handcuffs, and I was watching it with a bunch of people, and everybody had the same reaction. It was like, that should have been a big holy S moment, that this guy just snapped the handcuffs and came down, and instead the camera missed it. They were showing something else. And then
Solo just sort of fell out of the cage.
Right, and the announcers were just even Michael Cole or whoever was just sort of like, well, I guess Jacob Fatu broke out of the handcuffs somehow. That should have been a big deal. Like, oh my God, he broke the handcuffs,
And it was a missed opportunity. WWE, and people will criticize sometimes that things are a little too telegraphed in WWE, and I get that criticism, trust me, but part of the reason, as you see on something like WWE Unreal, is so that they don't miss these camera angles, and so that they get the important stuff on camera. So that was very uncharacteristic for them to not get that. Be on that.
It was. That's true. That's not something they usually do, but it was very noticeable that they missed that.
But I think I'm kind of with Al on night 1 main event, Brian. I think I think it was good, but I think we could have seen, given the 2 guys involved. I don't know if there was just maybe there was something a little bit lacking on Punk's end. I feel like some of the energy he's had in main event matches before, I didn't see it from him. I didn't see the fire. But overall, it's still, I think it was well paced. I think all that was fine. But and the Cody Cena match I thought was great. Maybe a little too long. Maybe I think some of the stuff could have been, the outside of the ring stuff could have been trimmed down a little bit, and it would have been a slightly better match. But I still think one of the better matches, definitely the best match of this run for Cena.
No question.
I think, So let's talk about that. I think maybe the best WWE match of the year so far.
And I would say that about Gunther and Punk. That's the
really
different.
I definitely think the Cena Cody match worked better. Cena's best match in years, for sure. And I think just kind of like the quintessential WWE main event. And we've said this about AEW as of late. If you like it, then you're gonna love it. If you like WWE style, and if you don't, you're gonna hate it, because there was gimmickry, him coming up the stage with him on his back.
It was a little silly.
You would either roll your eyes or you think
I liked it.
I did too. I thought it was great. people wanted.
Again, a minor quibble. I don't think they should have done the smoke when he came up. I think that made it look too fake. But but I think the whole idea of him using the Cody Vader was funny.
It was a WWE kind of Pat Patterson special smoke and mirrors match, and
literal.
I loved it. I thought it was terrific. I mean, I was thoroughly entertained, beginning to end. I mean, one thing we should talk about first, which is an important kind of curtain raiser or state a setter for the match, was Cena's babyface turn the night before. I went to they were showing SmackDown at Hudson Yards on a big screen in the west side of Manhattan. So I went with my wife and one of my kids to go see it, and we were like 5 minutes late, and we get there, the big screen, and I'm like, did John Cena just turn babyface? Like in the opening segment of SmackDown, like just in some kind of interview segment, it was so out of the blue that I think a lot of people, myself included, figured like, nah, it's got to be some kind of swerve. He turns back by the end of the night, or he turns in the middle of the match. No, that was it. That he just and the most anticlimactic babyface turn, and everybody I think assumed before the end of his run this year he would end his run as a babyface, but I was looking for that big redemption, Return of the Jedi, moment where whatever he does that heroic thing that brings him back to the good side, saves Cody from somebody worse or from The Rock or something like that. And no, it was just like, yeah, you're right. I've kind of been being a dick lately, and I shouldn't do that. And so I'm good now. And just bizarre. And I don't know what to make of it other than it was sort of, I think, very clearly kind of a white flag. This didn't work. This heel run is not working. And to their credit, I think they're correct in thinking to have the best possible match at SummerSlam, and maybe Brock Lesnar fits into this too in terms of getting the biggest reaction. Cena needs to work this match as a babyface, and I'm glad he did, because it was a much better match, and I loved the Cena babyface entrance, and I think his energy was better as a babyface. But
compared to their match at
babyface turn ever,
especially like
what's that?
What they did compared to what they did at WrestleMania, especially they stuck up the place at Wrestle,
yeah,
because they were limited. I mean, Cena was doing everything at half speed, and I mean he had to. He can't be the fiery John Cena.
That's interesting, because I didn't really think about it, how much being a heel actually affected his work rate, because back as a babyface, it was a different John Cena. I mean, the energy level 100%. Was so different. Yeah. So, I mean, Brian, what do you make of it? I mean, is this sort of an acknowledgement in WWE's part that, like, yeah, this was just a flop?
Yeah, and I know I called the heel turn, and now I feel partly responsible for this, but it did not work. It did not work. I just don't think he was ever comfortable doing it. And I think in hindsight, and I think in years to come, we're going to read and hear a lot about this that we're not hearing and reading about now. There's a lot of political struggle going on in that company, clearly involving The Rock and Triple H and everybody else. And I think this was partly a power struggle thing. He left them high and dry. You also want to see how they banned Travis Scott for, basically for what he did with Cody, but then also they kind of waited until The Rock was at a safe distance, and then they banned Travis Scott. There's some stuff going on behind the scenes there, and it seems like I feel like even in the promo itself, like part of the fault of the failure was laid at the feet of The Rock, essentially, for sabotaging this heel turn. But it was weak. It's not unprecedented for somebody to turn with a promo, but it's weak when it's done that way. I mean, actions speak louder than words. And like you said, Al, it's like he just came out and was just like, didn't really work. I'm a good guy again. Yay. And I'm thinking like you, oh, this is the swerve. And in the match, he's going to actually reveal himself to be worse than ever. Or maybe they're going to do a double turn and Cody's the heel. But it was just straight ahead. And I think I kind of knew it ahead of time that they were not going to swerve people, because immediately afterwards, that promo, the announcers were teasing exactly that. And I remember thinking, oh, now I know it's not going to happen.
Right.
You had Wade Barrett going, is this just a last-minute subterfuge? Is John Cena really? And it turned out
a perfect Wade Barrett,
right? I think you got your
oh my word! Right? Yeah, it was. It seemed to me like it was too telegraphed at that point. And then I'm thinking, wow, I guess he really is a babyface. And the funny thing about that match is usually a lot of people complain, including me, about these matches where it's 80 million false finishes. You're kicking out of every finisher over and over again. And there is
how many AAs did he hit? It was
I think it was like 4 or 5. Yeah. Because we got to the point we were laughing about it. I had my grown son there, I had my young son there, and everybody's friends, and we were just dying laughing at how many. At one point we were like, how many of these did he take? But for every now and then it actually works for me, and in this match it did. I have no complaints at all about all the false finishes and the kicking out of finishers. I just wish that they didn't do that in every single big
these
match.
These are the guys you do that with, right? Because these are the 2 top guys. And you're telling the story that John Cena is the greatest of all time and Cody is maybe his successor. So, yeah, these are the guys who should be superhuman.
Yeah, and it worked. It worked, and Cena was really in tip-top form, especially like for his age. He really gave off that old Cena vibe. Like he did it. He was big match John. It really worked, and the chemistry was there. Everything that didn't work at WrestleMania, it worked this time, and it really felt like the do-over. Like, okay, this is now we're doing it for real.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, as much as I think we could all agree that the heel run was a disappointment, I do think it helped in that it was sort of an absence makes the heart grow fonder thing, because we also talked about how he wasn't setting the world on fire as a babyface, right? Before he turned heel, you know, I think they wanted this fan embrace and recognizing him as this legend who is leaving, the greatest of all time. And the crowd response was fine, but it wasn't wasn't going to knock your socks off. But it was on Sunday night. I mean, I think like, were it not for that heel run, you wouldn't have had him being as over as a babyface on Sunday night.
Right. And it was to the point where I do think now you got to be very careful and keep him and Cena apart, because it was hurting Cody Rhodes in that match. They were really just dumping all over him. Every move he made, they were booing, and you don't want to have that unless you're planning to turn him. So,
well, that felt to me like that should have been John Cena's last match. I mean, if ever there was like a fitting exit, that was it. You know, like I thought that's how you go out. You lose the title. You know, puts Cody over. Took a million, crossroads and got out of it. One of the best matches of his career, and now like. We get a Cena Brock Lesnar feud, like just kind of in the middle of the card or something. I mean, I don't get it.
Well, I think that's partly because of pulling the plug on the heel turn. And I also think, when that happened at the end when he won and the crowd and all that stuff, I thought, okay, I guess they must be cutting this farewell tour short. This must be it. Yeah. And maybe the next few appearances are just going to be non-match appearances, and this is it. And then Brock came out, and I said, "Oh, okay. Now I see what they're going to do with him for the next couple of months. I get it now."
Yeah. Kevin, let's talk a little bit about Brock Lesnar. A lot of different opinions, emotions on this. I mean, there are people who are excited, think this is really good for business, bringing back one of your top stars, and then obviously there are people who are disgusted by this, given Brock's involvement in the Janelle Grant case, and a thought that. WWE should be keeping his distance from him. And for what it's worth, what exactly his involvement in that whole case was still remains somewhat unclear. But he's involved. He's mixed up. I mean, he is a name who is in the court cases, and so that's a factor. What was your reaction when you saw him come out, and overall, what do you think of the decision of bringing him back?
So I think in the short term, just from the reaction they wanted to get is the reaction they got.
Yeah, it was, and in the building, it was huge. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people want to be there for these big moments. So I can't say that there's no interest on the part of fans. That's just certainly not true. I'm not a fan of him coming back. I think primarily, this sends a terrible message, given how many. He's mentioned several times in the Janelle Grant case. Alleged that's part of the case they're trying to make in terms of trafficking, is that Janelle Grant was essentially like, oh, use this bait to kind of get Brock Lesnar to resign, like, oh, send him some dirty pictures. And then there was an allegation that Brock Lesnar wanted to set up a play date with her, which is gross.
Well, he goes to her room, and it's not super clear if she wasn't there, or like its story was he was too drunk.
There's no allegation that Brock committed any kind of harassment or assault, like in a legal sense. There's nothing like we should be clear. That's not. He's not a defendant in the case. He's not. But his involvement appears gross. It's also not the first gross thing we've heard about Brock Lesnar. I mean, if people forget, during the speaking out movement a few years ago, Terry Runnels told a story where Brock allegedly exposed himself to her. So like there's history with just some, I think the message it sends alone is reason enough to stay away from this. And then also you have a 48-year-old guy, and he obviously at his best. I have no doubt that he can still put a match together. I would hesitate to compare him to the older Goldberg in that, I see from an in-ring standpoint where he could deliver at a higher level than that. But to keep bringing him back, it is a bit of a retread. We've seen him and Cena 100 times. They're not going to do anything new. They're not going to surprise us. So given the message that it sends, even to the women in the locker room, it just sends, and they certainly didn't like. All indications are that Brock was really kept a secret, that only one or two people knew he was coming back. He was not like out openly backstage. They really hid him from everybody until he showed up. To me, that's not the mark of a company that is like proud of what they're doing. It's not, they didn't, oh, look, hey, everybody, welcome Brock back to the locker room, or we want to give you a heads up that he's, I get that they don't want the surprise to be spoiled, but you can't tell me that they're not a little, they know what they're doing. There's a reason they canceled the press scrum.
Right.
There's a reason they did not, there were people who traveled there from out of state, out of country in some cases, and there's never a guarantee that you're going to be invited to these post-show press conferences, but that's part of the appeal of going and covering the event, that you could potentially go and have a chance to ask Paul Beck a question, to ask some of the wrestlers involved a question. And then just magically when Brock Lesnar's back, they're not having them anymore. And you can argue whether or not there's a point to having them and all this stuff, but because a lot of times they end up just being an extension of the show and more promotion, and there's not really any like serious journalistic questions being asked. But to me, this whole thing just stinks. I think whatever how many people are realistically going to tune in again in 2025 because Brock Lesnar is there, who were not otherwise tuning in, who weren't already tuning in for a John Cena farewell tour? Like, is he really putting more butts in the seats at this point? A few, sure. But is he the difference maker that you really need him to be in the face of all the baggage that he brings with him? So I think in the short term, the reaction that night, obviously it worked. I think it's still a terrible idea.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I had the same thought. I mean, just from a business perspective, I don't know how much he brings and whether it's worth the trouble. And I know when we learned about this John Cena farewell tour, and you've got a year, you've got a finite number of dates with John Cena, we all got to thinking like, well, he's got to work a match with whoever the up and coming star is, Jey Uso or LA Knight, or help make stars. So now you're on the second half or beyond that of Cena's year, and we're getting a Brock Lesnar program. I mean, come on, it's the last thing. I don't doubt that they could put on some fine matches, but they are retread of retreads. And as much as I think WWE has been strong as of late, you do look at their top tier, and it is still a lot of guys in and around 40 or past 40, and it has been a while, with a few exceptions, since people really broke into that main event scene. Again, I guess Gunther would be one of them, but again, as crowded as it is up there, to now make room for Brock Lesnar again, I don't see it. But I'm also not naive to the fact that he's a huge star. He's one of the big stars of the last 10, 15 years, and was on the payroll. And I think probably as much as anything, they wanted that moment at SummerSlam. It's become a thing, right? Like, you got to bring somebody back. You got to have that holy crap moment. And that's what precipitated this. Brian?
Yeah, it definitely feels wrong. I mean, The thing is, here's the thing. I mean, no, it's not the same as if Vince McMahon had walked out, there of the curtain.
Give it time, Ryan. Give it time.
Right. Kevin, I thought the same thing. That I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility, especially now. And I mean, not that I do think it's a bad idea. However, he's not a defendant in the case. I think that's important. He's not a Vince McMahon. He's named in it. But I think just even on the basis of what he's involved with in there, not a good idea to have him come back right now. I don't think, I think if anything, I'll say this. I don't think he needs to be permanently banned to the cornfield forever from the wrestling business for this. However, I do think that at least wait until this thing shakes out and you figure out, because also we don't know, maybe there's more, wait until everything is sussed out and we know what's going on before we make a decision as to whether or not we're going to use him again. I think it was an imprudent move. It doesn't surprise me, wrestling being what it is, but no, I don't think that they should have done it. And I'm not saying, I don't know if they never should have done it, but they should have at least held off for now and continued to assess the situation for sure.
Yeah. I was going to bring it up later, but this is as good a time as any, because I do think it plays into the bigger conversation. And we've had this conversation before, basically since Donald Trump was elected, we've seen him off of TV. WWE hasn't touched him, even as their corporate partner UFC has gone all in on Trump, and he's like the star of every show at ringside and what have you. But I saw a decided shift in tone this week that I think may include the return of Brock Lesnar. It includes the embrace of Hulk Hogan, I think more than I might have expected, given some of his missteps in the last 10, 20 years. We saw the return of Donald Trump to WWE television, with Triple H visiting the White House and them showing that the footage on TV to overwhelming boos in MetLife Stadium. Being in the building, I can tell you it wasn't mixed. Maybe there were some, but overwhelmingly. Granted, it's New York, New Jersey. I'm sure they'd get a different reaction somewhere else. Linda was in the building watching the show. Some of that got out. So I definitely had the thought of, is this WWE kind of going all in on MAGA? And I think Lesnar's part of that, and maybe even McMahon's down the road, is just this idea of like, you can't cancel us, right? We don't care. We don't care. We're going to do what we want. We're not going to be politically correct. Oh, we're not going to let you railroad this guy who didn't do anything. It all feels very much out of that mindset. And I'm not here to pass judgment on whether that's good or bad. But again, my thought was that this was a very MAGA weekend for WWE.
Yeah, they are. They are. I agree with you. I did notice a shift. Just even seeing Trump appear on the screen in the middle of SummerSlam was very jarring. It was just sort of like, what the hell is he doing here?
Yeah,
that's my view. That wouldn't be the view of everyone watching. I'm sure there were some people that were doing cartwheels when they saw that. But I think that this is a decision that they've made. I don't think it's a smart one, because I think it's always bad business when you do stuff like this. I even mentioned this I did a Hogan tribute on my own podcast. It's like, there's a reason why entertainers and people sometimes choose to keep quiet on these subjects, because you run the risk of alienating so many people when you do things like this, just from that point of view. Because if you notice, here's the thing. Look, the McMahons have always been Republicans. That's not, they have always been donors to Republican causes. In fact, I remember years ago, I feel like I'm the only person that remembers this, on Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon taking shots at Bill Clinton on commentary. when he was trying to be all edgy in the early years of
he used
Monday
to have
Night.
a Clinton impersonator.
Right.
He was
okay.
at Survivor Series and WrestleMania. Yeah.
But I think they always were cautious to lean super into things like that for this reason. In fact, one thing I always bring up, and I think I might have said it here before, and if I did, forgive me, but when Rusev was first taking off as a heel, and they always used to show Vladimir Putin on the Titantron to get a big heel reaction for Rusev. Once all the Trump-Putin stuff started happening, they stopped doing that because it was too much of a political minefield. They were probably worried half the crowd would start cheering. So they
remember not long ago, El Grande Americano was originally billed as being from the Gulf of America, and then they dropped it.
So it's a weird thing. It does show a kind of boldness, I think, like you're saying now, where they're just like, screw this. You're not going to tell us what to do. Yeah. We're WWE. This is how we really feel. And I just think it's a dumb move. I don't know. You'll never go broke underestimating the wrestling fans, I hate to say. So I wonder what the reaction will be. I'd like to think there would be kind of, especially with the Brock stuff and everything, sort of maybe not the most enthusiastic response from fans. I mean, certainly if they could have that reaction for Cena, for God's sake, booing him just because he's boring, you would think that they would take a stand on some of these things. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's the smartest thing in the world to go all in on a political party or
do you think we see Trump on WWE television at any point in the near future? Because they've always had that hand whether they want it or not. But I don't doubt that if he was invited, Trump would be ringside at
there was that rumor over WrestleMania weekend. I don't know if you heard it floating around. Like, is he going to
be there?
I don't think it's out of the question that he's, at ringside. I don't think he's going to be in an angle.
I don't think they do it in New York or New Jersey.
Right. But it's not out of the question that he'd be there in the audience. One thing I do want to say as a devil's advocate thing here, I'm going to try to say this carefully, is I also think we have to be careful because our culture has become so politically polarized that even the glimpse of a president or the head of a political party that's not our political party will cause people to have a heart attack and all this kind of thing. However, there is a way to do it in a way that is just very perfunctory. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't have been out of the question if Hulk Hogan in 1985 showed up with Ronald Reagan as part of the physical fitness initiative. They would show it on the show. Like, oh, Hulk Hogan was at the White House this week. But this was at a time when you didn't have half the country on social media having a heart attack every time the bad man they didn't like appeared. So we do have to be careful of that too. Like, there is a way to do it. I mean, he is the president of the United States.
Right. And I believe Bush and Obama both recorded videos for like a Christmas in Iraq or whatever they used to call it, a tribute for the troops.
They did. So what I'm saying is, like, when someone is the president of the United States,
the office,
whether he's liked or not, it's not out of the question to mention him or include him in some kind of official sense. He is the president. But that's different from, that's a very different thing from getting, that to me doesn't cross the line of getting political, quote unquote. But you can go too far with it. And you can, when it becomes an ideological thing, that's very different, so it's a very delicate razor's edge line that they're walking.
I think even the fact that Michael Cole used the tagline of "Make America Fit Again" because it mirrors Trump's political.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, that's basically, and I get, it's the tagline a la "Say No to Drugs" or something like that, but it does hit the ears a certain way. Anyone who follows me on social media or spends any amount of time with me knows where I stand politically. My take, and I mean, this is the way I approach it in the magazine, I think some things go beyond political affiliation. I get that the idea of being anti-cancel culture or whatever is a MAGA ideal. But to me, when you have things like racism, alleged sexual harassment, alleged bigotry, that doesn't have a place in any political party. That's if one party wants to claim that, and I'm not saying they are, but if one party wants to claim that, then an endorsement of that party would be an endorsement of those ideals potentially to some people. So I see where it's muddy, but it's the same thing we started deliberately in the magazine, including more like, for example, LGBTQ wrestlers, or mentioning when part of a wrestler's story is that, like, I'm proud to be a Black pro wrestler, and like mentioning that we got a little bit of pushback on that when we first started, including those quotes and including those aspects of stories. But you know what? If people are going to get upset by that, that's not a political thing to me. That's just a human thing. And this is the same reason me not wanting to see Brock Lesnar back, or not wanting to see this or that thing on television is not an indictment of any political party. It's just to me, it's humanity, it's good taste, it's those things. I think it would have been certainly strange if they didn't mention Hulk Hogan. Like, he was so important to the industry, to the sport, to the company, certainly. But at the same time, it's irresponsible from a journalistic standpoint for us, and you had Stu on the podcast last time to not also talk about some of the complications of someone's legacy and some of the things that have, there's a reason Hulk Hogan got booed the last time he appeared in front of a WWE audience, I'm not expecting that to be mentioned alongside a 10-bell salute on WWE's end. I don't think honestly, I don't think that's on them to do that. And some people might not, like me to hear me say that, but I think this goes beyond political affiliation.
Yeah.
I do think there's certainly not coincidence that TKO owns UFC and WWE, and Donald Trump has been front and center for UFC events. I think if there was any kind of corporate directive, and apparently there was under Vince, to kind of not mention him, even though obviously he and Vince are, they go a way back, because he was this polarizing figure. And then here it's, someone's very excited in the background there.
Sorry, someone's trying to kill my dog, apparently.
Has some opinions. Anyway, yeah, I forget where I was going with that.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And yeah, I think if the extent of it was Trump bringing back the presidential fitness test, which is probably the most innocuous thing that he has done since.
Perfunctory, as Brian said. There's a way to mention it factually. Yeah,
that'd be fine. But it is the totality of all these things, right? And that they're all happening kind of around the same time. It did make me kind of raise my eyebrows. Like something's going on.
And I will say this, even perfunctory or not aside, there's also the side of them from a business standpoint that might say, look, maybe this should be okay to mention and talk about and lean into, but the fact that we know how polarizing this stuff is now, and we know how a large portion of our fan base will likely react, maybe we don't do it. Maybe we just stay away from it.
But is there something to, like, look, your one of your big stars is in the White House. That's a big deal, right? And I do think that,
right, and that's why
they would have shown that
they couldn't resist. And like you said, I understand that side of it. It's like, how could you resist? He's right there, standing next to the president and talking and
spitting the water at.
We got to mention it, but it does. It feels a little bit like, this administration does this a lot. They did it with Bill Maher, for God's sake, where it's like, we're going to court you, we're going to invite you, we're going to include you, we're going to dazzle you, and then it's actually really good PR, and we're going to get press for it. We're going to get good notices for it. And I feel like WWE is getting courted in this way, and it's getting the response that was desired.
Yeah. Really interesting. On the Hogan thing, talking a little bit more, and we'll get back to SummerSlam in a moment, but talking more about the fallout. Last time we talked was right after we got the news of his passing. I think one of the most interesting things, and I think it goes to this conversation as well, was because I think there was going to be a lot of negativity. My concern was that folks who were very negative about Hulk Hogan in social media, in public, right after his death, were going to get a big backlash for that, the idea that it was insensitive, what have you. And I think some of that happened, but I think by and large, the opposite was the case, which is the strongest backlash was for people who were maybe too complimentary of Hogan. We saw it with Chelsea Green, or not critical enough. Chelsea Green. There's another influencer called Joey Swole who came out in a Hogan costume and got absolutely destroyed in social media. Ended up having to come out and apologize. Chelsea as well. So that was really interesting. So what do you guys, either of you, make of that?
Poor Chelsea got chased.
I got to open my door, so I will this last podcast too. So please carry on.
Yeah. Chelsea. I mean, and this is not bias in that she's on the cover of our magazine currently, and she is a sweetheart of a person, but she got chased off social media. She was basically asked while on a TV show to comment on the legacy of Hulk Hogan, which she did, and she tried to do, as again, Brian, you said, this perfunctory manner. And just talk about what he meant as a pro wrestler. I mean, she is not a bigoted person in any way. And she was not excusing comments he made. And she's, when the whole thing with Tessa Blanchard happened, when Tessa Blanchard, the allegations against her came out, who was one of the corroborators of that? It was Chelsea Green. So she's spoken up against racism in the past, against homophobia. She's, even when it's lost her fans and followers. She's spoken up for trans rights, and that's not been popular with some people, but this is the right thing, so I'm going to do it. And then she kind of got chased off of social media for just talking about Hogan's career, and that's I don't know. It's difficult. I think people are held to unreasonable standards sometimes, and I say this as a person who most people would say is fairly politically correct, and again, I've said where I stand politically, but like there has to be a way to talk about things when asked to talk about them and to comment on them. Whether it's appropriate to keep going on, and whether you sweep the bad stuff under the rug. That's a whole other conversation. But
I also think I'm sorry, Kevin.
Please.
I also think we do this ritualistic thing happens online whenever anyone dies. And I'm not minimizing stuff about Hogan, but because it doesn't matter who it is, they will find whatever bad thought this person ever had or bad thing they did, and they will poo-poo anybody celebrating them and want to drag them through the mud. I saw it happen with David Bowie, who was like, there was this universal outpouring of love. People found reasons to not be happy about that. It happened with Ozzy recently. It doesn't matter who it is. Even with Hogan, while there are many valid reasons, I saw people that were joyful because he opposed unionization. And I'm just like, Jesus, I agree that he shouldn't oppose unionization, but that's not a reason to celebrate that a guy died. So the thing about it is what you see because of this ritual thing is anybody now who comes out in remembering someone in a positive way, like Chelsea Green, even if it's very simple, will get killed for doing it. It happened. There was an NXT wrestler who wore an Ole Anderson t-shirt when Ole Anderson died. I forget the guy. And he was made to publicly apologize because Ole Anderson said racist things 40 years ago in a deposition somewhere. And it's like, there's a difference between using your platform to say, to voice your opposition or support, but to call out other people, I think sometimes goes too far. I even said it on the Hogan show that I did, where it's like, I said, you've got to show people some grace here. And I actually got emotional on my show. I'm not going to get emotional here. I'll try not to. Where it's like, you know what? People loved this guy. They loved him growing up. They loved him as a kid. He meant a lot to them. You give these people some space if they want to say some nice things, and even if it annoys you or bothers you, keep your mouth shut. Keep it to yourself. Like, give these people a little bit of respect. They're trying to deal, in some cases, with these complicated issues in their own way. And I think there's no room for that now, where it's just like you're all this or you're all that, and we're going to find a way to drag anybody who dies the minute they die. And if you're not on board with that, you're just as bad as they are. And it's a little mind-boggling.
I want to say it was Hurricane Helms on Twitter was talking about after, because he had good experiences with Hogan on screen and behind the scenes, looked up to him as a performer, but he's like, also, I have a lot of friends who were very hurt by things he said.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I'm struggling with that right now. And it sucks. And how are you supposed to? Yeah. So that I think there are people. Look, I had, on a personal level, I'll say it. I once that stuff came out about Hogan, I kind of, and this was not the only negative thing I'd heard about Hulk Hogan over the years, about Terry Bollea, I should say. Yeah, I kind of wrote him off on a personal level. It's kind of like, wow, he's really not a good guy. And this is someone I looked up. You know, my mom, God rest her soul, will tell the story if she's here. One time I embarrassingly was walked in on doing the Hulk Hogan pose down to the WrestleMania, the original wrestling album. And she brought that up to girlfriends years later. Like, you know, so I was the biggest Hulkamaniac as a kid. Even as much as I had written him off on a personal level, yeah, there was a childhood Kevin was for at least for a few minutes, like, struggled with this. Like, oh yeah, my heart hurts for childhood Kevin, who was the Hulkamaniac, even though I don't like the things Terry Bollea did. So it is complicated. And I think we also do have to make room for, there are some people who are just like, screw this guy forever. Some people are going to feel like that. You can't tell them that they can't.
Right. That's fine. They're entitled to feel that.
Yes.
You know, when I did what I did, it's like I knew I was going to get killed either way, because you either get people that are going, oh, why you're so easy on him, and you're talking about him in this complimentary way, and then you get people on the other side going, well, he was the greatest thing ever. How dare you say?
I don't know if you guys saw the comments on the YouTube for the last podcast episode, but someone said that anyone speaking negatively about the saved Hulk Hogan would be cast into a pit of fire. So you
listen, I am a Sunday school teacher. Okay, I'm not going in any pit of fire. I don't care whatever that person says.
Yeah, I think Hogan is I think these lessons extend to a lot of people in a lot of situations. When people die, and on one hand, their contributions to their industry, their art are undeniable. On the other hand, they had a lot of personal failings. I think Hogan really, to use a cliche, is that on steroids. in that, on one, the good is he was literally a Saturday morning cartoon character, right? I mean, he was a flag waving. He was the character was supposed to personify everything that is pure and good, and all of, like, American values. And then what we knew of the real person, it wasn't just that he screwed up here and there. There are a lot of evidence that, and I had forgotten, even when we did the show, I had forgotten about a lot of the really disgusting stuff. I mean, the bad is really bad, and there's a lot of it. And I think one of the reasons it is particularly off-putting is because there is this feeling that he was working everybody, right? And the public Hulk Hogan was such an act and such a phony. And when we got glimpses of the real Hulk Hogan, it couldn't be more, a polar opposite of that guy. I had forgotten the thing about the car accident that Nick was in with his best friend, where his best friend ended up paralyzed. And then you have the jailhouse conversation where they're pretty much dumping on the best friend.
Right.
He got into the situation because he was so negative.
And he's doubling down. Like, and Hogan, or Bollea, is doubling down and saying more racist stuff in that phone call, which basically was
like a couple times that he's caught on tape. Like, right. That all it is like his racial.
Right. Which is what indicated to everybody, like, okay, this wasn't just, oh, I'm really angry in a dark moment. I said stuff I shouldn't have said because of my daughter, blah, blah, blah. It sort of gives the feeling, okay, he just kind of says this stuff probably all the time. And that's I think, was the icing on the cake. Nobody could have ever lived up to the ideal of what he was presented as, but especially somebody who was a very flawed person. And I hate to say, not even the most popular guy within the business at the time.
Oh yeah, I think there was one of the real telling things was those the Temple Bell salutes, and there's been a lot of attention paid to some of the facial reactions on the people on the stage, and some people who were not on the stage.
Right, and
there were a lot of wrestlers of color,
and they were right, and there were people, like, you could tell. Like, I know people criticized Punk for being there, and I'm thinking, well, I guess in a way he's trying to be professional, he's trying to be respectful. I didn't have an issue with that because we know where he stands and things like that. But nobody could have lived up to that. But the thing is, you had people who didn't care even in the business at the time. And they loved the fact that he drew money on any card that they were on, and they appreciated that and they respected that. But even at the time, like I've definitely had a lot of conversation and interviews with old timers, people from his era who were in candid moments, definitely not complimentary, and sort of kind of rolled their eyes about him and things like that. And that's not the case with everybody. I mean, compare that to somebody like a Terry Funk, who was, universally loved by everybody. He was not that.
In the last podcast, I think Kevin, you much touched that, but I touched on in the last podcast that like the compliments are really professional compliments, right?
Yes.
He drew a lot of money.
They're thanks for the house holster. That's what the compliments are.
Yeah, not a lot of like, what a great guy he was. I mean, there's some of that. There's some of that out there. There are certainly people who had good relationships with
Ric Flair had a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
For example.
But even that, maybe
if you believe Ric Flair's story will change.
Consider the source. Yeah.
Sure.
And some of this. So anyhow, but I mean, I think given all of, these complexities, WWE basically did a fine job, I think, in how they handled it. I thought Cody was in a rough spot in being kind of the spokesman, and I think he probably handled it about as politically smart as you could, in that he prefaced what he said, as we said it, with him being a complicated man or having a complicated legacy, something like that.
He did.
But undeniably being so influential in the business, and that is all true. So absolutely. Back to SummerSlam. Let's talk about night one. The big story there being the return of Seth Rollins. It was a swerve all along. I called it, Brian. This time I was right. I think by the time the match came in the ring, a lot of people caught on, and a lot of things that made me wonder from early on, where is any kind of diagnosis? Where's the pictures of him in the hospital? Where's the surgery? Where's the x-rays? There weren't, it's one thing to show up on the Rich Eisen show on crutches or whatever. I actually think they could have gone further. If they really wanted to make this work, I think they're a little lazy.
He was out with his family on crutches. I mean, come on, that's impressive. That's like Dusty Rhodes at home with the cast on.
Then go all in and put out some X-rays and say
I thought that they did a great job.
I'm undergoing surgery in Birmingham, Alabama on Tuesday or what have you. I mean, if you really want to go all in. My bigger question, though,
I thought actually there was a story about him going to Alabama.
But that never happened. Right. I mean, he was supposed to, and then we never heard that he did. My bigger question to this, and I thought about it kind of the next morning waking up, was like, from a storyline perspective, and this might get into a conversation about kayfabe that I want to have. What was the point? Like other than to swerve people, what was the advantage that he got in doing that? He had the briefcase all along. He could have done what he did Saturday night, whether he was fooling everybody or not. My wife, of all people, actually gave me the something of a good explanation, which I didn't hear from Seth, was that, and I'd like to hear something like this. It essentially gave him a month off. It gave him a month off to prepare, to train, to be 100%. Going into that match, no distractions, so you get like the best version of Seth Rollins against the weakest, most vulnerable champion. It's something, but we didn't hear any of that on Monday. What we heard was, fooled all of you. What was the point of that?
Maybe I think you could argue that Punk, if Rollins is healthy, is somehow prepares himself differently for his match, where he's prepared for the possibility of Seth coming out afterwards. Whereas here he was able to rest on his laurels a little bit. You could say maybe he would have wrestled the match a little bit differently. You would have held something back, but then he's not going to win the match. It's a flimsy explanation. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense that he would be willing to take the loss to LA Knight. There was something they tried to offer an explanation with, by way of Adam Pearce on Raw. Your medical people lied to our medical people. You have your own medical people. Why were they not checking him out? They would have spotted right away that it's a bogus injury, and then he would have had to come to work. Like, it doesn't make any sense. This feels late WCW to me, and that
it's Russo. Yeah,
it really does. I think on Seth's side of things, as Brian said, I appreciate the extra mile going to sell it from this old school kayfabe kind of way, but the actual storyline explanation, no, it doesn't hold water to me.
I think that you guys are picking it apart too much.
Oh boy, here we are. You're saying just see where it goes.
No, not see where it goes.
I don't know what the point of it was.
But I think, Al, you're asking the question, and I think it's right in front of our faces. The point of it was to generate even more heat and from the fans and anger, as much as you can get real anger in 2025, and shock than it would have normally. It was to create a scenario where it's like, wow, Punk really has his moment. This is it, 12 years, and it's not going to be ruined by Seth Rollins because he's hurt. This is Punk. Wow, he's back. He did it. And holy crap, no, it's going to get ruined anyway. It was to create that level of taking that feud to another level, like you really thought it was Charlie Brown and the football, You really thought you were going to get your moment. This was it. You waited all these years, and I still screwed you. Look what I did.
From a storyline perspective, how does that help him win the championship if that is his ultimate goal? Now, you can make the argument that, and again, we haven't heard this from Seth, that as important or more important than winning the title was breaking CM Punk's heart. And to that end, yes, this makes sense for the reason you just said. Let him have that moment and then steal it away from him, and you have the satisfaction of just having crushed his spirit. But again, if the goal was win the championship, and he's the visionary that laid out this masterful blueprint to how we would win the World Heavyweight Championship, how does faking an injury for a month help you do that? I don't get it.
Oh, well, okay. I'll add one piece of kayfabe reason to that. And I'm sorry, but the leaf blower is apparently in my living room. So I'll add one little piece of kayfabe explanation to that, is that Punk himself would have been even more caught off guard in that moment. I think you guys were even hinting at it, that he wouldn't have even in the back of his head been thinking, okay, I got to be careful. Seth Rollins might come out. He was absolutely lured into this sense of security. Like, I don't even have to worry about him. And then and you know what I mean? Like that idea of, I'm really going to catch you off guard, which is going to give me even a better chance of taking it from you. And not to mention the fact, though, that it does, well, they could have done this even without the injury, but it creates a scenario for McIntyre of, wow, somebody did to you exactly what you did to me. Isn't that nice?
Sure.
But they didn't need the injury to do that part of
it. I do. Okay. This all, I don't love it, but I get it. But let me ask you this. Why did Punk not get out of the damn ring? Punk at Money in the Bank, when he beat Cena and made off with the title, the reason it was so exciting, part of the reason why it was so exciting, is because Vince came out like, well, I'm going to take that damn belt from you. Like, you don't work here. What are you talking about? And then he climbs in the crowd, blows a kiss, and runs away. What is stopping not just Punk, but really anybody who's being cashed in on, apart from like a sense of pride? But like, who gives a crap?
It could also be exhaustion. You know what I mean? Like, you're just too exhausted.
That Seth took 3 minutes to get to the ring.
Right. No, I agree with you.
No, but I don't have a problem with this.
I think it would be great to do that as a finish, to have somebody be like, nope, this isn't happening to me, and just run away. But I do think that if it's someone like Punk or a popular face like that, it does make them look weak or scared.
And he hates Seth. If Seth wants to fight,
but doesn't it also make you look?
Because if you notice, the first thing that happened as soon as Seth came in is he still tried to give him the GTS and finish him off like immediately, but it just didn't work.
Right. No, I don't have a problem with that, because I do believe the Punk character that we know. If Seth is such a scumbag as to cash in at that moment, I'll happily take you on. I'll let's do it. Let's fight. And kind of
he didn't sell it as if he was happy, though. He sold it as
angry.
Like, oh, crap, he's back.
Yeah. But anyhow, so we've got a Seth. Well, let's talk about kind of the reset WWE. Seth as the world champion and Cody as the other world champion. How's this feeling to people going forward? Before we got on, I was saying I have kind of a sense that WWE's cooling off a little bit. If you remember, like the Attitude Era and how hot things were, and at some point, I'd say it was sort of like early 2001. There was just a feeling of in the air that like, we've kind of hit the peak and we're starting to come down. And it's feeling a little bit like that for me in that a lot of acts for me in WWE right now are just not clicking. And, Cody's got the world title back, which he is the top guy. I think it's fine. It also doesn't feel as fresh as it did the first time around. Seth with the world title, they've telegraphed this for a while, and it's fine. It looks like they're moving to, I guess, eventually a Seth Roman program, but there's word that Roman's going to be gone for a little while to shoot a movie. But how are we feeling about, the reset WWE?
Well, I can sense that. Yeah. I mean, they're not maybe at the level, and these things are so hard to measure because they're still, I'm sure, making obscene amounts of money. But, in terms of popularity and how people's willingness to buy tickets and people's watching the show, getting invested, social media and all that kind of stuff, it may not be where it was or where it was heading, say 2021, 2022, 2023. You could see that. I mean, the Attitude Era was what, 3-4 years? I mean, it was pretty short. Even the peak Hulkmania national expansion, maybe they had like 5 really good years. So these things they burn bright, and I mean, they're doing fine, but yeah, I could see it as sort of a coming down period. I don't think it's any cause for panic, and I definitely don't think it's like, oh, it's garbage now, but it's definitely not at the peak of where it was. You could sort of feel like this is on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah, some of it is bloodline is, I think, finally gone. I mean, that angle is finally over. One thing I think in WWE's advantage, and Kevin might disagree with this, is I don't sense that they've got to be that concerned about competition. I think I don't think AEW is setting the world on fire. I think they're better than they were this time last year. Or am I wrong, Kevin? I mean, should they be concerned about resting on their laurels? And do you sense that AEW is on an upward trajectory while WWE is on a downward one?
So I think it's complicated. I think there's I don't think they are resting on their laurels. I think they're making some interesting choices, and some of them I like and some of them I don't. In some metrics, I know like TV is a little bit inconsistent for WWE in terms of viewership, but other metrics are like live attendance. Yes, they didn't fill up MetLife Stadium, but at the same time, the weekly attendance numbers for Raw and SmackDown are great, and those are actually better than they were a couple years ago. They are still doing well with these, media rights deals, with these sponsorships. I think in a lot of ways they're doing a better job of integrating with the sports world and pop culture than they were even a couple of years ago. So I think it's not as simple as up and down. I think like this is the Kleenex, the Coca-Cola, the synonymous, the Xerox, the synonymous with the industry brand. It is the industry leader. I don't think there's any risk of that changing, even though AEW in some ways is doing a little bit better. They've scaled down the venues. The TV numbers are up. The pay-per-view numbers are good.
You got a new champion.
They're not, but at the same time, they're not at any, there's no real risk of them overtaking WWE ever, I'd argue. But if it were going to happen, I don't think there was ever a risk, but it would have been a couple of years ago where the tides were shifting. It's, being a strong number 2, there's no shame in that, and that's what they should focus on. However, even though WWE does not have to worry about AEW, except as maybe like an alternate employer that people might want to go to, they are still treating them like competition.
Sure.
And they're counter programming them, and they're sabotaging them and taking steps to mess with them. So I think just old habits die hard with that, because that's very much the way Vince McMahon operated. Right. He wasn't the first promoter to do that. He wouldn't be the last, but he was certainly the most aggressive. And here it's continuing under the current WWE administration. But no, I don't think there's any real risk of WWE, even if it's cooling down a little bit by some metrics. I think there are other things that they are doing to ensure that this is a strong promotion company brand for years to come. So much ado about nothing, really. I think in as much as it's cooled a little bit, there's no real danger of a downturn.
Yeah, we just got the word this morning about the ESPN deal. The PLE is moving to ESPN in 2026, which I'm sure is financially a huge deal for them. Maybe another downside for the fans is it sounds like it's going to be more expensive to follow the PLEs.
$30 a month?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, down from I pay. I forget what it is. I think we pay something like $5 for the year for Peacock. We got some crazy Black Friday deal. So it's going to go up a lot. Last thing, we touched on it a few times here. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the state of kayfabe and whether we've witnessed the death of kayfabe. And again, on one hand, you've got Seth working everybody. This is very much, in the vein of old school wrestling, very much kayfabe. And as you touched on, doing away with the press conferences, in part because I think it was damaging kayfabe. I think Brock also had a lot to do with it. But I got to say, I think this format from WWE's perspective is much better. They get to control the message. They don't have to worry about any uncomfortable questions. And they could still have Triple H go out there and give his lines, and with a really hot crowd behind them that just really makes the product look hot and over. So I from a business perspective, I totally get why they do it, and I think it's actually better for the product because those press conferences were just awkward and clumsy. And yet on the other hand, we've got WWE Unreal. I don't know how much of you guys watched it. I've watched the first couple of episodes, and understanding that some of this is worked as well. But I do think it lifts the curtain on wrestling like we've never seen before. I was just watching an episode last night, and the one thing that really kind of was a holy crap moment for me was when I don't know if you guys seen this one where it was the Rumble episode, and they have the Cody Kevin match, and then they show him go backstage, and as soon as they're backstage, Kevin's apologizing to Cody for a certain spot that maybe he didn't protect them as well as he could have, and it was just, I mean, you talk about unthinkable that would be on TV once upon a time. Josh Burnett, some others have come out saying how terrible this is, and I get it. There's certainly part of me that is very uncomfortable with it. Coming up at a time where kayfabe was more protected. I also get that it is 2025 and the gig is up and all that. So Brian, what's your thoughts on Unreal and the state of WWE kayfabe?
I think it's ironic because I'm pretty certain that Vince McMahon never would have allowed something like this. And ironically, he gave the famous, death of kayfabe speech in 1997 or 8. But even he, I don't think would have ever wanted to go this far. It's one thing to say, this is entertainment. Okay, duh. It's another thing to say, this is how we do it. These are all the grisly details of how it's actually done. Look, this is coming from someone, I've been there. I've physically been behind that curtain. I know all these. I've seen these conversations. I've heard them. I've taken part in them. I've been in Gorilla. But that's very different from everyone knowing it. It does feel very weird to me. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure I probably will. I'm a little bit dreading it. I just feel like it's one thing to be in the industry, of course, and these things. You work in the industry, you do things. Okay, great. It's another thing when everyone knows it. It's like wrestling in the last 25 years has just had this pathological need to just reveal everything to its audience. You have to think, I guess, in the end of what's the benefit. Is it going to help? Is it going to increase eyeballs, increase interest? Because I've even seen people online saying things like, this increases my appreciation for what they do. Yeah, I've actually seen that. This makes me want to watch it more and invest more in it because now I see how they do it, and it makes me love it more and appreciate the sacrifices. But it's this weird thing. I don't know if kayfabe ever will die, no matter how much you tell people, because if you think it's really, really, truly dead, I would encourage you to follow Adam Pearce on social media.
Oh yeah.
because I'm friends with him on Facebook. That poor man is inundated constantly with anger and vitriol about the decisions. No, really, that he makes on Raw.
He is, yeah.
And the matches. And this poor man is constantly, I don't know why he's still on there. He's just constantly fighting back, like earnestly at these people. Leave me alone. No, but he will say, it is a television show in all caps. Leave me alone. It is a television show. This is not real. So I think there's always going to be a fragment. And I hate to be the guy that says this, but I feel bad. You know what I feel bad about with a show like this? The kids.
Yeah.
The kids believe. Like, the
don't let
kids
them watch
believe.
it. Yeah.
Shut up, Siri.
Yeah. I really, that's true. And, I think one of the complicating things is when I say kayfabe, the death of kayfabe, I think we have to understand that there's been an evolution of kayfabe. And what you're talking about with the people who give Adam a hard time, with all due respect, I think those are people at a certain sophistication level. And that's different than, I think what I talk about is, you watch the David Copperfield, magic show, and we all know it's an illusion, but you don't want him in the middle of the trick explaining how you do it, right? And that's the part that makes me uncomfortable, is especially when they're talking about Unreal on the WWE show, right? So like, stay tuned for Netflix, where this show on Netflix, where we're going to tell you that this is all fake.
And now we want you to really care about this match that's going to happen.
And that was also an issue with the press conferences, and it's one thing that's makes wrestling so different than any other art form, is that it's this weird hybrid where John Cena's real name is John Cena, and yet he is the character John Cena. So where does the reality begin and the work begin? So it's tough. I mean, I almost wish that like you could like color code, the WWE program. Like, imagine like a green outline or something when this is a work, and then like change it to when it's a shoot, because you get like this whiplash, like you had on the post show for SummerSlam, Jey Uso in character, sort of talking about the match he just had, talking about Unreal and a segment that aired on Unreal that he's glad that fans got a chance to see. And again, I'm just sort of like, my head is spinning in terms of like trying to keep up.
Yeah. They're going all in on the notion of this is a television show, which has been something that's been slowly building for years, I guess, since the Attitude Era, of really thinking about it as a TV show. Because other TV shows do this sort of thing. This is Talking Dead, for people that love to watch The Walking Dead.
And then Walking Dead in the middle of Walking Dead, right?
But sometimes they would do that. They would have a break in the middle of the show.
The characters.
And they would tease what was going to be coming on Talking Dead. But I think what jars people is this is not something that wrestling ever used to do. Wrestling used to be a little bit different, because I would always laugh when people would say years ago, they would give the whole, well, it's a movie, it's a TV show. When you see a movie, you don't think it's real. But it's a little bit of gaslighting, because wrestling would try to convince you that it was real in a way that movies and other TV shows never do. Like they don't try to make you think it's real. They understand that it's not real. And wrestling didn't do that. But now wrestling itself is even doing that, the way that other movies and TV shows do it. And it's going to make people uncomfortable, certainly. It's just they're just leaning into the fictitious nature of things now in a way that they never used to do. And I guess people just kind of have to get used to it. I don't know. This is just this has been an ongoing transformation over the last, I would say, even 40 years of professional wrestling, a gradual from Tuesday Night Titans to this, a gradual transformation of pulling the curtain back. Tuesday Night Titans pissed people off in 1984, and now it's so innocuous. But just the fact that you had wrestlers doing comedy sketches was seen as, oh, you're just exposing everything. I think the difference is this. I'll just say this, because I have a guest who comes on my show a lot. I'll credit it to him, Howard Baum, a photographer, who has said this, and I think there's a lot of truth to this. The idea that wrestling is a work has been in the mainstream consciousness since forever, for like 100 years now. It's been in the mainstream consciousness but the difference was with kayfabe, wrestling itself never blinked. Wrestling itself never came out and said, you're right. They did whatever they could to convince you that, you're wrong. No, no matter how obvious it was, they would always stand up and say, nope, I don't know anything about that. This is a sport. This is 100% true. If you think it's fake, why don't you get in the ring with me? Why don't you pay my medical bills? There would always be that kind of thing. Like, yes, in the public, we talk about how wrestling is a work, but the business would always say, no, that's not true. And now that's gone. And that's the true death of kayfabe.
I'll take that a step further. And in some ways, it's gotten better, right? Because if you think back to like Vince Russo era promoting, they were addressing the fact that it was a work in the storylines. Remember, Bash in the Beach 2000 with Hogan and Jarrett, and that was so much worse. And if anything, one place where I think WWE and I think wrestling as a whole has gotten better is getting away from that stuff on air. You don't hear as much wrestlers on air complaining about being politically held down or anything like that. I do think it's gotten, I think Punk is a great example of this. I mean, I think he's really kind of the standard bearer for making wins and losses matter. Cody also, and really pushing that. My goal when I get in there is to pin you to the mat 1, 2, 3 and win the belt. And I think they've been more disciplined about that on air, while off air kind of loosening up some to a degree that I don't know how comfortable I am with. I do think we were talking about like Tuesday Night Times, or I was even thinking more recently like the Steve Austin podcast that they would share, that they would do on the WWE Network. Those are like quaint now in comparison to what they're doing, Well, the last bastion of kayfabe, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So,
but the thing is, even we acknowledge the fiction and the entertainment side of it. And I think in some ways we're juggling that same thing, because we will talk about it as sport, and we'll talk about it in terms of the wins and losses mattering. But when we're doing it, it's not all that much different than someone writing about a television show, because in the review of the television show, they will talk about it in the universe as like, it's a hybrid, because on one part of the review, you can say, Mary, the character's name, found out that her husband had cheated on her. And then later on, you can say Susan Sarandon did a great job of portraying Mary, or whatever. But I don't know why those are the examples I choose, but the point is, like, us doing it, writing about it, it's a little bit more accepted. We're not the show itself. Although, we sometimes we appear on the show in one form or another, so it does get complicated. To me, it's, I don't know. I think you're never going to completely see kayfabe die, because you do need people to buy into that fiction or the reality of the universe. You need them to suspend disbelief. You want to sow these seeds of doubt, and you have guys like, even like you think about the Steve Austin show. Okay, yeah, that was very like peel back the curtain, but at the same time, remember they had that segment where he and Paul Heyman talked about, I'd love to get in the ring. I can take Brock Lesnar down. Like there's a little bit of flowing back and forth, and I think you see that from guys like Punk and Rhodes when they're appearing publicly on the show or not. They're able. I mean, think about the pipe bomb. The pipe bomb was a masterful blend of this behind the scenes. Like, you kind of, for the people who know, it's all there and all the parts are there. But for the people who are still I just want to disappear into this show, they could do that. You weren't just saying this is all fake. So there's a way to balance that. There's a way to so if anyone listening or watching has children, maybe shut it off here, because I'm going to pull back the curtain on something else. Okay, 3, 2.
I know where you're going.
it's a TV show where there's the talking about Santa Claus and the existence of Santa Claus. But then at the end of the episode, wait a minute, where did this present come from?
Yeah.
I didn't buy that present. Who?
Yeah.
But it can't be. Who? Oh my gosh, is he real? It's, and that's kind of what wrestling's trying to accomplish. Like, they're trying to leave open, like, maybe it is real.
What I would like, and I would be okay with, and I think they're kind of taking a step in this direction, especially with the cancellation of those press conferences, is a clean break. I could live with Unreal if they are super disciplined on air. And just a few weeks ago we had Cena's version of the pipe bomb, right? So
Right.
I'd really love if on air it was 100% taking it seriously, really protecting kayfabe or what's left of kayfabe, and then I could live with Unreal, separately on Netflix. And I enjoyed it. I think it's really well produced and well done. And ironically, I think there's a fair amount of kayfabe in there.
And I got to say, just on the Santa Claus thing, Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt you because I thought that you were referring to the fact that Paul Heyman last week during a promo revealed that there is no Santa Claus. And that bugged me because kids do watch this show. Yeah. And that actually annoyed me, believe it or not. Kids do. I'm glad my son wasn't watching that episode, but that would be like me watching Gremlins in 1984. Ruined everything for me. But you have to be very careful, Al, to your point. The one thing is you don't want to blink during the actual show itself. That's the thing. Because movies and TV shows don't do that. James Bond doesn't turn to the screen and give a wink. You don't do that. And I remember watching, but it has happened. I remember when I worked for WWE, there was a promo. Edge was feuding with somebody. I forget who it was. And during the promo, his big burn to this guy was, "Oh, you have very bad character development." And I remember we all rolled our eyes. We were just like, what is this crap?
Yeah.
Why is the average fan going to care about that? Oh, great character development. You don't want to lean into things like that. That's where it could actually hurt.
I think there's a better comparison. Sometimes you have like a movie with a green screen in it, and in the end credits, you'll see some of the behind the scenes. It would be like cutting to the green screen during the movie.
Oh, yeah. You know what kind of did that, Brian? I know you're a comic guy. She-Hulk, the Marvel. I don't know if you saw. Yeah, which was
there was
terrible.
Some shows. Here's the thing: some movies and shows do the fourth wall thing, but it's usually a comedy, like Naked Gun or Happy Gilmore, and they'll do these things
or
where
Deadpool for comic books.
Right, Deadpool's a great one where they acknowledge the artifice, but it's usually for comedic effect. Not if you're trying to create drama and tension and excitement. You take the air right out of it. You don't want to do it for that,
Yeah. So again, I mean, I could live with Unreal if they really double down on being disciplined on air, and I think they largely have. I mean, I do think it's much better than it was years ago. But again, Vince Russo was the worst at this kind of thing. And once upon a time, it was so taboo, right? That like if you were like the insider fan, you felt like they were talking to you that when making some of these references. And there's some of that is still out there, but I do think by and large, it's gotten better. Anyhow, we covered a lot of stuff. Good, a fun show. Before we head out of here, Kevin, anything you want to promote? Again, latest issue, PWI.
Yes, it's on newsstands now. The next issue will be out a week from Thursday. Head on over to pwi-online.com. Also want to give a plug to, if you're subscribed to this podcast, you're already getting the episodes, but Pro Wrestling Indie Traded, I host with wrestler Kai McKenna. So that focuses specifically on indie wrestling, and just, make sure you check out our YouTube. Make sure you check out our social media at official PWI on Instagram and I still can't call it X, Twitter.
Goes back to the other conversation we were.
Yeah.
And Brian, with the book, you teased a little bit of it last week, and some good news, at least in the way of the audiobook, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to get to narrate the audiobook myself. I was able to convince them that instead of me making a list of every name and word in the book that a potential narrator could mispronounce.
What is an external protuberance?
Right. How do I pronounce it? Is this Arnold Scotland?
External occipital protuberance. That was Gorilla Monsoon's thing.
Yes, lateral and collateral ligaments. Yeah. So I am going to get to narrate the book. In fact, I'm going into the studio later this week to start. And it's going to be a process that goes into September to get it finished. So the audiobook will come out a little later. So again, the book is Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. It's a biography of Gorilla Monsoon. It comes out in print and digital on September 30th. The audiobook will probably be a little later than that, but I don't have a date yet.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to it.
And this upcoming issue, actually, Brian's Way It Was column touches a little bit on the subject of his book.
Oh yeah, and I want to say that too, because I forgot that in the new issue that's coming out later this month of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, I talk about Gorilla Monsoon in conjunction with the book. But the cool part too is I had so many photos for this book that I couldn't use that the family gave me, and it was just too many. There's like 60 photos in the book, and I still had way more than that. So I was able to use a couple that didn't make the book for space reasons from the wrestling career, from the early career of Gorilla Monsoon, and they'll be in the new issue of PWI. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of our bread and butter. So yeah, it's fun to have some classic wrestling photos. All right, guys, thank you so much for taking this much time. With a lot to cover, and we did it. Everybody head on over to PWI-online.com, and we will see you soon.